Welcome back, everyone, to another episode from Burst Mode Games. Today, what we have for you is a 500-point combat patrol match between the Craftworld Eldar and the Necrons. If you look at the map, what we have today is we have a map that has 5 objectives. How we play 500 points here is no secondaries, and all scoring will be primary scoring, meaning that if you own 1 objective, you'll get 5 points, 2 objectives, you'll get 10 points, and if you own more than your opponent, you'll get an additional 5 points, and that scoring will occur at the end of each player's command phase. We also play with sweep and hold, or sweep and clear kind of rule set, and what that means is that if any army owns one of the objectives at the end of any phase, then they'll continue to hold it whether that unit moves away or stays until it's been taken by the opposing army, meaning that a group of guardians or a group of Necron warriors can hang on to an objective at the end of one of their phases, and it'll turn the color of that team. For the Craftworld Eldar, they're going to be orange, and then the Necrons for this game are going to be green, and it'll remain under their control, and then they'll score on their command phase. All right, with that, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the armies that we'll be having for this match. Before we go into the armies, I would just like to ask, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and go ahead and click that subscribe button below, and then also leave a like if you like the content that we've been creating here. So for the Craftworld Eldar, what they brought today is a custom craft world with the 2 traits, Expert Crafters and Hail of Doom. Expert Crafters is going to allow those rerolls during the shooting phase and fighting phase, 1 time per each unit in each phase. And then Hail of Doom is going to allow all shuriken weaponry to have a -1 to their AP when they are attacking an opposing unit within 12 inches. And then for the headquarters slot, the Craftworlds are bringing a Farseer. He's going to be having Falchu's Wing as kind of the relic for the Eldar during this game. And then as far as spells, he's going to be bringing Doom and Executioner in addition to his Smite. The Warlock Skyrunner, he is going to be the Warlord for the Eldar, and he is going to have the trait Seer of the Shifting Vector to allow for some rerolls. And the spells that he's bringing are Protect/Jinx and Focus Will instead of the typical Smite. For the troops, the Eldar are going to be bringing a squad of Dire Avengers. They're going to have Battle Fortune, which is going to allow the Exarchs to have a 4-up invulnerable save, and then also a squad of Guardian Defenders. And then in the heavy support slot, the Eldar are going to be bringing a Falcon and Warwalkers, and the heavy weapons that are going to be attached to them are just going to be shuriken cannons. And so that completes the Eldar army. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Necrons.
For the Necron army, we were a custom dynasty today with immovable phalanx, which if they did not move, we will add 1 to armor saves for damage characteristics of a 1. Also, Relentless Expansionist, which gives them a pre-game move of 6 inches. We had the Technomancer as our Warlord and only HQ with the Canoptic Cloak. He also had the Cryptogeometric Adjuster, Rites of Reanimation as normal, and for the Warlord trait, we went with Immortal Pride, giving him that 5-up Feel No Pain. Also, with the Immortal Pride, he gets 6 inches. Each time combat attrition is taken, he can ignore them if a core unit is within 6 inches, which doesn't come into play in this game. He also has the Relic Voltaic Staff. Then we went with 10 Warriors, 3 Scorpec Destroyers with the Plasma Scythe, and 3 Locust Destroyers with the Gauze Cannon, which would be the 24-inch gun.
Looking at how each army deployed today, what we have on the left-hand side in the orange zone is going to be the Craftworld Eldar, and up in the top left, you can see the Falcon kind of tucking away, trying to maximize his standoff. His movement's so big that if he needs to, he can kind of jump in and grab some of those objectives. And then down in the center, we have the troops with the Dire Avengers, the Guardians, on the objective, and they're also kind of protecting the Farseer and the Warlock Skyrunner, and trying to hide a little bit behind that terrain just to make it a little bit more difficult and force the Necrons to choose a direction of attack with their melee units. And then in the south, we have the Warwalker for the Craftworlds, sitting back, trying to maximize his range as well. For the Necrons, we kind of have almost like a small castle, so all the Scorpec Destroyers, the Locust Destroyers, is his Technomancer, and the Warriors are all clumped together on top of the objective, ready to move forward with his pre-game move. and then be able to pick a direction that he wants to go and be able to shoot. With the small board, there's really nowhere that any of the Eldar can hide from those Locust Destroyers, and he's going to be trying to launch those Scorpek Destroyers up into combat to keep them from being shot by the heavy weapons, and then also to stall the Eldar from getting the objectives. So with that, let's go ahead and see what turn 1 looks like. We did the roll-off, and it looks like Necrons are going to be taking turn 1.
All right, Necrons turn 1. We did our 6-inch pregame move. I gained a CP, going up to 4 CP. And then everybody moved forward, and the Scorpek Destroyers advanced 3 inches.
All right, so that'll take us to Necrons turn 1 shooting phase.
All right, so we started the shooting phase with the Technomancer, shooting at the Warwalker, hitting twice, but not wounding. Then we moved to the Locust Destroyers, who shot everything into the Warwalker, and we burned 1 stratagem for disintegration capacitors, which will automatically wound on a 6. And they ended up destroying the Warwalker. Then we had the Warriors shooting into
the Guardians.
And taking out 5 of those guys. We also used 1 CP there for Relentless Onslaught, which made rapid fire weapons on an unmodified roll of a 6 score 1 additional hit.
All right, so that takes us into the charge and fight phase for the Necrons on turn 1. Okay, so there was no charges or fights from the Necrons on their turn 1. We did morale over here on the Guardian Defenders, but they passed with a 1, so no additional Guardians dead. And we'll see if the Craftworld can come back from this initial first turn from the Necrons at the top of their turn 1. All right, at the beginning of Craftworld Eldar turn 1, they did gain a CP going from 3 to 4. And then went into the movement phase. Down here, the Dire Avengers advanced, scoring a 4, moving towards this objective in this giant ball of Necron death that's down here. The Guardians decided to do the same thing. They only rolled a 1, though, so they're closing the distance as well. The Farseer and the Warlock went down south, following the Guardians, and then the Falcon moved from way northwest down here so that he was in range of these Scorpek Destroyers. So that took us to the Psychic phase, at which point the Craftworld Eldar spent 1 CP for Seer Council, allowing the Warlock Skyrunner and the Farseer +1 to their casts. The Warlock jinxed the Scorpek Destroyers, and then went to the Farseer. The Farseer then casted Doom successfully on the Scorpek Destroyers, and then casted Smite, which did 1 mortal wound, and then Executioner, which did 4 mortal wounds, killing one of them and bringing another one down to 1, with a total of 5 mortal wounds inflicted on those destroyers. He then used the CP for the stratagem Unparalleled Mastery to cast a 3rd power, which was that Smite, Executioner, and Doom. And so that concludes Craftworld Eldar turn 1 Psychic phase. We'll move into Craftworld shooting phase. All right, so at the end of the Craftworld's turn 1 shooting phase, this is where we sit. It started off with the Falcon firing into the Scorpek Destroyers, and with the combination of Jinx and Doom, was able to actually wipe them out completely. The rest of the army then shot into the Necron Technomancer, bringing him down to 1 wound, but not after burning a CP, leaving the Necrons at 0 CP to save a very critical save at the end that prevented him from losing that wound. So that CP, in addition to his Feel No Pain, allowed that headquarters to live. However, no one over here has a objective secured, and so after the Dire Avengers shot, they used 1 CP, bringing the Craftworlds down to 1 to use Fire and Fade and move up onto the out objective. There's not going to be any charges. These units all, advanced, and then also with the Fire and Fade, you can't charge with those Dire Avengers after using it, and no morale required. So that's going to take us into Necrons turn 2.
All right, so Necrons turn 2 movement. I gained 1 CP, bringing the Necrons to 1 CP. The Technomancer fell back a little bit, so he had a little bit of cover. And then the Warriors moved up to get in rapid fire range.
All right, and so with movement, no Psychic phase for the Necrons, complete. Also note, the Technomancer did heal himself, and so he's back up to full wounds. So all of the Eldar's efforts in the shooting phase were for naught. And moving into Necrons turn 2 shooting.
All right, so we started with the Warriors. They shot into the blob on the objective and wiped them out. Then the Locust Destroyers shot into the
Guardians.
The Guardians used 1 CP to give them a 4-up invuln, which helped them a lot because only one died from that volley. And then my Technomancer shot into the tank and knocked off 2 wounds of the tank.
All right, so that's going to complete Necrons Turn 2. They did gain back their objective down here, so that's going to impact the Craftworld, and we'll see if they can, if the Craftworld can keep up. Moving into Craftworld Turn 2. Okay, so in the command phase for the Craftworld Eldar, they went up to 1 CP, and then they went into their movement phase. Over here, the Guardians, they actually advanced, rolling a 6 to get back on top of this objective with their objective secured ability and taking that away from the Necrons. Also in the command phase, forgot to mention, Craftworld Eldar did go up to 5 points, bringing the total score to Necrons at 10 and Craftworld Eldar at 5. Okay, so back to the movement phase. The Falcon moved up here in between these 2 terrain features, kind of move blocking any charge opportunities, and to close the distance with the Necron Warriors, and also kind of get, just a toe in on that objective if able. And then the Farseer and the Warlock Skyrunner kind of followed the Falcon, getting closer to that northern objective that is still yet to be claimed. And then we went to the Psychic phase. So in the Psychic phase, the Craftworld Eldar did burn their final CP on Seer Council, thinking that the Psychic abilities were more important than getting a Fire and Fade and stealing that objective up north at this point in the game. At which point, the Warlock Skyrunner casted Jinx successfully on the Warrior Blob in the middle. And then the Farseer casted Smite and Executioner, which combined did a total of 5 mortal wounds, killing 5 of the warriors. And that's going to take us into the Craftworld's Turn 2 shooting phase. All right, so at the end of the Craftworld shooting phase, and then basically their turn, we're going to go into this. So the Falcon and the Warlock and the Farseer all shot their shuriken weapons into the warrior blob, ending up killing something around 100 of them, but they all started coming back, so only 3 actually died. That brought us down here where the Falcon shot the Pulse Laser into the Locust Destroyers, ended up killing 2 of them, but one of them actually reanimated, which was pretty neat. And then the Guardians all shot into the Locust Destroyers as well, chipping off the 1 wound of the one that came back. So overall, pretty decent turn for the Craftworld shooting phase. There's not going to be any charges or fights, and that's going to bring us into Necrons Turn 3.
All right, end of the last turn, I actually did morale with the Warriors. Lost 1 guy, so I have 1 Warrior left. Then we went into the top of the turn 3. I gained a CP. Going to 2 CP, I moved the Warrior to get in range of those guys down there at the south. Regained a wound from the Locust Destroyers for Living Metal, and used the reanimation from the Technomancer to bring another one back. And now we will move into the shooting phase.
That's right, and also in the command phase, they did go up 10 points for owning the center objective and the far eastern objective, bringing Necron's score to 20 to the Craftworld Eldar's 5. So, Necron Turn 3 shooting.
All right, so in the shooting phase, the Locust Destroyers took out those guys on the south, regaining that objective. That 1 warrior ended up not doing anything, and then my Technomancer put his shots into the tank and knocked off 2 more wounds, bringing it down to 8, which will wrap up Necron's Turn 3.
All right, moving into Craftworld's Turn 3. All right, in the command phase for the Craftworld Eldar, they got 5 points, bringing them up to 10 to the Necrons' 20 points. They also got 1 CP, bringing their total up to 1 CP. And then went into the movement phase. So the Warlock Skyrunner went north to secure that objective. The Farseer went to the central objective, still keeping within 3 inches of the Falcon, just for the lookout, sir, in the event that anyone tries to shoot him from that direction, from the south. And then we went into the Psychic phase after the Falcon moved to the southern objective. In the Psychic phase, the Warlock casted Jinx successfully on the Locust Destroyers, so they'll be losing 1 to their save. And then the Farseer casted Smite on the Warrior that was securing the central objective. And then he casted Doom successfully on the Locust Destroyers. He did have to use his Farseer reroll for that, but it did go off, so all wounds will be rerolled against them. And then we spent 1 and only CP for the Craftworld Eldar for Unparalleled Mastery, allowing him to cast a 3rd spell, which he casted Executioner and got 3 wounds off on the first roll, which killed 1, which allowed him to do an additional D3 mortal wounds, and did 1 mortal wound to a second one. So that's going to bring us into the Craftworld's Turn 3 shooting phase. Okay, at the end of the Craftworld Eldar turn 3 shooting phase, this is kind of where we're sitting. We're looking at the Locust Destroyers having been destroyed by the Falcon. The Pulse Laser did work off the first volley, ended up killing both of them. The Necrons did use 1 CP, bringing them down to 1 for a reroll of a save, but that was unsuccessful, and so the Locust Destroyers died.
All right, for the Necrons movement, the Technomancer moved up to the middle of the board to get into range to charge the Farseer as well as shoot at the tank in the same turn.
Yep, and in the command phase for the Necrons, they did go up to 2 CP and then also scored 5 points for owning this Eastern objective, bringing the Necrons score to 25 to the Craftworld Eldar's 10, moving into Necrons Turn 4 shooting.
All right, so the Technomancer shot into the tank and did nothing. Charged into the Farseer and knocked it down to 1 wound. The Farseer attacked back, hit twice, and wounded twice, but I made both of my saves. So that will wrap up Necron top of turn 4.
All right, so moving into Craftworld Turn 4. All right, at the top of Craftworld Turn 4, in the command phase, the Craftworld scored 15 victory points for owning more than their opponent and owning 2 objectives, tying up the score with the Necrons 25 to 25. Then went into the movement phase, at which point the Falcon advanced from his location here, rolling a 2 and securing that far east objective for the Craftworld Eldar. The Farseer held what he had. He was still in contact in fighting with the Technomancer, and then the Warlock moved south to that central objective to secure that along with the Farseer for the Craftworld Eldar. Moving into the Psychic phase, the Eldar burned their final CP for Seer Council, giving both the Warlock and the Farseer +1 to cast. And then the Warlock casted Focus Will on the Farseer successfully, making all the Farseer's spells +3. The Farseer then casted Smite, getting a roll of 13 with the +3 modifier, and then ended up doing 4 mortal wounds, killing the Technomancer. The Necrons then used Resurrection Protocols for 1 command point, bringing them down to 1 command point, and successfully brought the Technomancer back from the dead with 3 wounds remaining on that objective. And so that's going to take us into the Craftworld Turn 4 shooting phase. All right, so in the shooting phase, everything shot into the Technomancer, the tank's assault weapons, the Warlock, the Farseer, brought him all the way down to 1 wound. With that, the Craftworld got cocky, charged in with the Warlock and the Farseer. When we charged in with the Warlock, the Technomancer did use the Necron's final CP to shoot Overwatch, but was unsuccessful. The Warlock had some really good saves because the Technomancer did get some hits in. Then in combat, both the Farseer and the Warlock were unable to finish off that final wound. And the Technomancer swung back and just completely annihilated the Farseer. And so that's going to complete the Craftworld Eldar's turn 4, and this is going to bring it into the top of the Necrons' turn 5 and last turn.
So at the beginning of the turn, he healed back, the Technomancer being he. Went back up to 3 wounds. Then we went straight into combat, and I just lost that fight. Completely got wiped out, failing all saves, failing all 5-up feel no pains, and just got completely splattered. And that will wrap up the game with Necrons losing 25 to 40.
That's right, yeah. So that's another great game in the bag. It looks like Craftworld ended up squeezing a victory over the Necrons, 40 to 25. I think the Psychic phase really paid off for the Craftworlds in this match, and then also the Pulse Laser for the Falcon. The Necrons were extremely durable, but with some bad luck on some saves, some bad luck on some CP rerolls, the Craftworlds ended up being able to outlast the Necrons, shoot them off, and take this game. Once again, just a friendly reminder, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment, and if you have any feedback, rules violations you noticed, or any content you'd like to see in the future, we'd love to hear it.